options, so many buttons. All right, let's see. I think I'm broadcasting now, so a couple of minutes delay here. Let's see if we can switch into screen sharing. And I will turn my camera off also. Hold on a second there to give some more bandwidth. Where do we have that? There would be screen share and full screen. I think I need to share my entire screen and present to everyone. All right, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'll admit this is a bit new, too many options. I like one button options scenarios. But I think this should be recording. No, this should be broadcasting at this time. And hopefully we have audio working as well. Looks like I do have audio working. I don't see anybody in the call, so I have no idea what's going on. You know what? I'm gonna go start the video hangout. No, that's not it. All right, I think that one is live, best I can tell. I'm gonna go and just do my thing and record this at the same time, because I don't know how that's gonna play through Google if they are recording it as well. So let's go and record. Here's my microphone enabled. Let's go use Microsoft Expression Encoder, the free capture, and go. All right, so we have this being recorded, and at least we'll have a way to configure that and put it on the video hangout. Strangest thing is I don't see anybody on. I thought I would see some sort of a list of attendees, so maybe that's not how this works. I'm just going to assume this is actually recording and broadcasting, and I shall now, let's see, screen sharing is enabled. All right, so here we go. Here we start our first ever video hangout on Google. Let's start with the newsletter. We just had this newsletter go out this morning. There is a Cyber Monday sale tomorrow. Wanted to make sure if you are interested in Howler, there is a coupon that you can use, Fantasy 59, just for another day. This one will go through Cyber Monday and then expire on the 2nd of December. You can use it for Howler 9.5. You can also use it for the slightly lower cost PD Artist 9.2 and even Howler 9.2. So there's a couple of options. Just as a reminder, Artist is the program that does not do animation, even though you can actually load an animated brush and paint with that, but only on a still image. Howler is the version that does everything. It does both still image painting and also animations. And it does a couple of interesting things for 3D. We'll explore a few of those. So let's get started. What do I want to do today? Obviously, I want to do some painting. The title gave it away. Winter is coming. And you may have seen some of these, not photographs, but paintings. Actually, not paintings, renderings. Let's be honest. But there is some painted component in there too. And what we'll do is we'll explore with Howler 9.5 how to do that. So what's in that scene? While I'm starting it up here, let's go quickly back to it just to see what's in a scene like that. What does it take to create this winter scene? Here was a screenshot. This one actually is in the animation phase, where we have the snowfall, the blizzard having its way at first snow coming in the far back end of the valley. And then there's a couple of big snowflakes also somewhere in the foreground. And there's also some trees that have already collected some fluff there, some snow. And so there's a couple of different techniques here involved in making this entire winter scene. Certainly the mountains in the background, but even the hills in the foreground, those are actually mountains, just the ones in the back. Just composited or put together later on. So here's, in fact, a look at one of them. And, you know, if you're a skier, if you like to snowboard or ski, you know that this is one you want to take with enough speed to jump. Of course, maybe be careful if you get close to this view, because you don't know how deep and steep that drop is. What we want to do really is explore some of this. So let's see what tools do we have in Howler 9.5 to create this. For one, you might be tempted to start painting that terrain or that elevation map. You have some airbrushes there. You have a number of different brushes available, actually. Simply right-clicking on that brush tool. And by the way, this is not the layout you might see by default. If you've never used Howler or Dog Waffle, you'll notice that in the Windows menu, you can change the layout. You can adjust the position, for instance, for the sidebar here on the right side, to have the sidebar on the right. By default, it's on the left. You may have a two-column toolbar. By default, that's the one you have. I changed also the colors, interface styles. There's a couple of different high contrast or light on dark and so on. So once you have that, let's focus on actually painting something. So the default brush might be something like this one here. And that brush is not going to be very useful for painting a 3D terrain, but it could be a starting point. In fact, if we fluff it up a little bit more, if you right-click here and choose perhaps one of the larger ones, but then not at this high opacity, perhaps reduce the opacity up here. This was the high opacity. Let's go to a very low opacity here. So you have to go over it a bit more often to get a change in color. What you can do, you can use this as an elevation map. And so, for instance, you could go to the transform and say 3D Designer, give me some magic here. And so that elevation map is what we're talking about when it comes to creating terrains, right? The colors, in fact, you can see the colors here. Instead of using the object color, you can use the image that we created. And so as we rotate this to look at it from the top and reduce the amplitude, this is the original image, right? And so you can extrude it a little bit more. You can smooth it out a little bit more as well, and give it a nice angle. Now, this does not look much like terrain quite yet. Let's go back. Let's go actually look for a different way to get this terrain. Another fun way to explore is to actually use some photographs. Something you might have in your smartphone or digital camera of some sort. Let me see if I have one here. Yeah, this one, for instance. If you take a look at the screen up above, you're going to notice, I'm going to close this, you're going to notice that there is always something happening in the sky, even if it's plain blue. But if with any luck, you'll see some clouds, and those can be used for elevation maps too. For instance, if you want to take a look at this area here, maybe I'll use the rectangle to alpha selection. I'll highlight it a little bit better with the selection like this, overlay alpha, there you go. Use the control key to shift it around. And perhaps we'll want this area here, or something like this, right? And then we crop to that selection. And at this point, we might want to even blur it a little bit. There's lots of filters here. Let's do a quick Gaussian blur and get rid of some of the graininess we might have. Convert it to grayscale from the image menu. There is a couple of ways to convert it. I like the one exposing it through a colored lens so that you get a bit more contrast or choice. And then you can also increase the contrast by dynamic expansion of the dynamic range. So this image here would be quite interesting now. Let's see if I can see what the dimensions are on the image info. 1042, let's go and render that through the filter, transform, 3D Designer. Right, so here is another type of elevation map converted to a terrain. A little bit of body, some of those clouds are producing that appearance. Still not really a huge amount of terrain appearance. We'll need to do a little bit more with that. So what do we do to actually make this look a bit more like terrain? There are a couple of things that really play into that. One of them is, of course, the elevation. How high is it? But also the dimensions of it, perhaps. how vast you want this to appear. And then there is also the, oh, I'm getting hailed here. Hold on a second. All right, let's hello, hello. Hello. Nope, that did not work. Okay. I think this is not going to be a huge success today, but we are going to continue here. And I have no idea how to get out of that now. Okay, let's see. Not clear how to make more interactive. Ah, okay. Okay, so what we will do is we'll probably want to do that a little bit more interactive. Good. You know what? I should have this on 2 screens. This is probably my mistake here. Having this on a single screen makes it a bit difficult to operate. So let's see. Video. Oh, that's not. I am so not feeling comfortable with this Google interface thing. Where do we go? Is this one still running? See, that's the thing I don't get. I got some other stuff happening here. This is live. Or is it? This is me, and not exactly sure that this is going to work. I'm already in the call. I knew that. All right. This will be fun. This will be one for the memories, for the records. All right. You know what? I don't know if I'm still sharing this. Yeah, I know it would be nice to make this a bit more interactive. I just don't know that we can do that today. Make this a little floating. Okay. And then we shall go back to my screen share, your events. I think I should still be good here. All right, Ayo, if you could text me in your text window, can you hear me? And I see that my screen is still being shared according to this message here. Are you still able to hear me? It's funny, I don't see anybody in the list of attendees. I would have thought I should have seen, and of course, that's not the list here. You know what? I'm going to go blind here and assume that you can hear me. I'm certainly recording, so I'm going to explore this, converting it video-wise and posting it on the YouTube channel. Once I'm done with my main walkthrough, we'll try to reopen that channel a little bit and make it more interactive if we can do a Q&A session on that. All right, so where was I? Creating the 3D, using the 3D designer to create a bit of a mountain scene. So one thing that will be really useful is to have sort of major features, such as the big white areas, and then some smaller features, maybe a canyon going through it. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll just start from scratch, and I will go right here. Let me take one of these here. Let's take the QHD. All right. One thing we can do is just take the plasma noise as a starting point, and that quite often will work really nice to create some sort of a mountain scene, high mountain alpine appearance. 3D designer, here we go. Okay, so how is this going to turn into mountains? We need to have a better lighting. We need to have the light perhaps come in from the side, indicate where we want it. and also far away and a little bit brighter so we can still see it, and then add some shadows. So there's a ray trace soft shadow that we can add to that. Okay, obviously I'm being hailed here, so I assume this is important enough. We should stop this and find out what's going on. This one's presenting. Let's see. Why can to list all available commands? Okay, why can I not see who's on group chat? That's not it. Ayo, help me out here. Talk to me. Oh, there is a few. No. Ibrahim. So how come I cannot see everybody in that list? There's 3. There's Ayo, there's Ibrahim, and Soweto. Well, thanks for joining, guys. At least we have some audience. Not sure where this is going to go. This is going to be a really big learning experience, that's for sure. Let me take this off. Yep, there's a little floating. Aha, this is the one I was looking for. A little bit of a list of attendees. And I'm assuming you can still hear me. Let's keep going. I think I am still sharing my screen. Yep. And there is something here. Let's see. All right. I can see your message now, Ayo. So maybe you keep going and we start a different group call to make it interactive after you're done. Yeah, let's do that. You know what? Let me do this. I wanted to really kind of give you an explanation as to why I'm saying this is the one about winter is coming. There's actually a box of chocolates that I bought the other day, and it had some really fabulous, a great picture. Let me see if I can show it. I want to get to my Dropbox. Did I not have it? Let me see if I have it in my clipboard. Oh, that's not it. All right, let's go to my Dropbox. Where's the Dropbox when you need it? You know what? Too many buttons. Okay, there it is. And in my Dropbox under Philip, I got some dog waffle pictures. My most recent one uploaded today. Pretty sure that's the one. Yep. Okay, so here's a box of chocolates that I saw. Swiss Prestige, it was awesome. And I just looked at this box and I saw, oh, look at that. There's some beautiful mountains in the background, some starry skies or snowflakes, some hills in the foreground, and some trees with a lot of snow. It's a bit blurry. Sorry about the lack of quality on that photograph. But that's basically showing a lot of things that I want to build and then put together. All right, so it's going to look a little bit like this here. Where's my other? Not this one. Thought I had another. This one maybe? Nope. Let's go hide this. Oh. I must have closed it. Desktop, presentation. There we go. All right. So I have a couple of pictures here that will further detail what I'm talking about here. We have something like this done very quickly. All right. So let's do something like this. There's a main. We call this in French le massif central, the main central massive amount of rock. Right. The main mountain, and then there's a couple of smaller pieces around it, and that's what we need to perhaps see if we can get as an elevation map. So let's go back to this and start actually anew. I'm going to go to one of the predefined image sizes, 1024 by 768. Let's grab this and create again an initial render of the plasma noise. Actually, we saw in the river tutorial, the river canyon tutorials, that there is a nice trick here with this tool. The right click on that for the linear gradient tool, you can create an interesting canyon going through that. What I'm going to do is actually zoom out a little bit and make it on the edge so that it's essentially not going to go across the entire image. But then I'm going to use that filter, and that filter here, plasma noise, and I'm going to use it in a different mode. Rather than opaque, you could use it in multiply mode, so you see it gradually get dark nonetheless as it's multiplied to black. I'm going to use it in difference mode. And with the difference mode, that's when you see this thing here. It looks a little bit like a canyon or a river going through it. And as you randomly click this to randomize it and get sort of, oh, there's an interesting one. A river in the foreground, right? Kind of the deep part of the valley. And then we'll focus on the parts up here. Let's click OK. And I'm going to store this image. We might need to go back to that. And really in Dog Waffle, storing an image is an interesting feature. Not just storing images, but brushes as well. You'll see here storing a brush, storing and managing actually. There's also, when you have an image in the brush, you can store it as an image. That has some advantages. At times when you're working on your selection mask, let's clear it right now, you might want to store the alpha channel. Right now everything is selected, so you see that. But you could, for instance, grab this image that you're looking at here, get image, and store a copy of it here. So to, for instance, then turn it into the alpha channel, replace, boom, now it's in the alpha channel. And I have it highlighted in pink overlay mode here. If I turn this off, you still see the marching ants for your selection mask. All right, so and just a little side note, there's a lot of times when we want to store resources. Same thing with the animation. We have a store an animation onto disk or onto memory, just to quickly get back to it. So if I mess this up and I have the desire to get back to this image, I just click it and it restores that. There's actually other things you can do with it. You have this little pull down icon here, and I encourage you to explore all of these because it's quite powerful when you look at what it can do other than just restoring the image. It did also store the alpha channel, and sometimes you want to get that replacing just the alpha that was there. All right, let's focus on our terrain. Let's go see what that looks like if we don't do any further changes to it. And the transform of the 3D designer, there we go. And here we go. All right, so we have a terrain that looks more or less elevated, has a valley in the foreground. We can zoom back a little bit, or move back rather, keep it smooth. Let's go focus on the lights. There's two lights up here. This group here has a ray trace option as well. That will cast a shadow. And so if you move the light around, you can see that it also casts a shadow as you lower the light source or keep it further away. Or increase the intensity, you'll see that it's casting that shadow. That's really important to get a nice 3D depth appearance to it. But there's another thing, there's another light here. That one has a bit of a bluish tint, and that one will usually put at the very top above the scene, zenith right in the center, so it's kind of above it and shining down as if it were the sky, bluish sky, has a bluish tint here, light source 2 color. Light source 1 is perhaps a little bit more on the reddish side if we want to show a sunset illumination. And so here is the light source 2 with a little bit of bluish tint. And we can also go and now say, well, what else can we do to the terrain here to make it more interesting? For that, we open the new options. There is more options. Click on that, and you'll see additional options here on the right side. Perhaps the number one, most important one is erosion. So with erosion, it takes a little second or two, and then you'll see it apply all over the place. And with that, it will have eroded, and then you can adjust that erosion map to have more or less of that. But not only that, you can also, let's zoom in a little bit so we can see better what's happening. You can also fill those crevices, the gullies or the carved canyons, fill them, all right, so you can adjust them. And by the way, while you do that, anytime you rotate or you change position, it seems to be losing quality. That is intentional. It's made to work fast, even on a small netbook or on a low-end system. So it's going temporarily to a lower resolution and doesn't have to push the entire mesh of that 3D terrain. It's very high resolution or density. When you look at not shading it, you see the mesh, it's pretty detailed. So if you're on a slow system, that would take a little bit too long and would not be that interactively enjoyable. So that's why we temporarily switch to a low resolution as if you had done this, and then you can go back to the full resolution automatically. All right, so let's talk about erosion. The amount of erosion you get here is one thing. Then you can use the sediments to fill it back up. So with the sediments, you get another really interesting look to that. Let's add a little bit more light here. And so the sediments have two parts. There's the sediment intensity. It kind of flattens or curves it a little bit towards the edges of the walls. But there's also the sediment amount that simply fills it up. And so what I like to do is give it a little bit less than the max on that. And then that way you get still to see a lot of that carved appearance. But really, I mean, depending on what it is you want to show, there's lots of different ways to use that. Let's go and choose a vantage point. Perhaps looking into this part here is really interesting. In fact, let me cancel out of this and work on that high part here. I want to replicate that into the other areas in the background here. I want to have some brighter spots. So you could use that airbrush here, and with the airbrush, large airbrush, for instance, or really large, one of those, something like that, just paint over that. That's too bright though. So what I'll do instead is I'll grab a portion of this and perhaps use the lasso to do that. Something like this, just very noisy. Grab this, maybe use the selection and blur this selection a little bit. You can show the alpha to see how much blurring you get. And then that way I'll pick this up as that selection here. I'll pick this up as a custom brush from the brush menu right here. Use selected as brush. So I've now picked that up. You can use the PRV preview to see it. If the opacity is high enough, you'll see it better. You can store this brush. It's a custom brush. It's one that you designed and has a transparent background. And I'm being hailed here, so let's do some more checking here on, let's see. Okay. Yeah, we'll try that later. Let's focus on just the run through on this, and then we'll go on the Q&A after that. So here, what I want to do is add this thing a couple of places, but with random size, random orientation, just randomize it in many different ways. So with the custom brushes, what you want to do is go to the settings. That's really for any brushes. Pin it down here, and then look at the custom and make sure we have the allow brush transforms, or allow transforms. Check this. This is, by the way, something you can also enable here. Allow custom. There's a shortcut here in the context bar. So when you do that, that allows the custom brush to be transformed. Now, one transform you can always do is the random position. That does not take a lot of compute time. But the reason why we ask you to check that box is that on slow systems, it might take a bit too long for very large images to be rotated and scaled. So if you know your system can handle it, no problem. We can change the size kind of randomly. We can change the rotation angle. And so you can have it basically, also there's these shortcuts here. Use the direction of the pointer so it's randomly changing. Right. So now this is too bright. Let's undo that. In fact, it's not going any brighter than what the image contains. So what I want to do is really change the mode to something like additive, and then also the opacity very low. So it's going to need quite a bit before it's coming up there. But now you can see that it's going all the way to the maximum white if you keep painting on it. And so that's one way that you can a bit better control your elevation map there. All right, so let's go store that image. And certainly storing an image, just like storing anything, will usually go just into memory. Be sure to save it on a file if you think this is important. And you want to be able to get back to it in case the program crashes, you run out of memory or something else. Like this morning, I ran out of power. I didn't notice that my external power plug was actually disconnected. and suddenly, whoop, everything died. It happens. So, all right, so here is that new elevation map. Let's go and re-enter the transform in 3D Designer. It does remember the most recent settings that we had. So it jumps right back to that scene. Actually, let me cancel out and use the Shift and Control key to move this over to the side a little bit. We have the earlier map here, this current elevation map. This selection we don't need anymore. Let's go and render that. So filter, transform, 3D Designer. All right, so we now have probably the shape we want for the background. Beautiful mountains here. We can control the sediments. We can control a little bit of the sediment amount. Just a tiny little bit there. It's very sensitive there by one click. It'd be nice to have a little control here to go by one instance. But other things you can do also is reduce the amount, maybe not give it too much of that. Give it a bit more brightness, bring the light a little bit closer. And it's always nice to have it from the side, whether it's from the left side or from the right side, because that gives you long shadows. That gives you a lot of contrast on those gullies, on those carved valleys. So I'm going to go something like this. It's nice to see this part here cast a shadow onto this side. That also gives it a nice little bit of depth perception or correlation. And so as you rotate that, you can see that, right? Let's see what else. We have the camera. If you want to make it look like we're flying into this, then that's certainly a wide angle view you'll want to try as well. But if this is going to be more in the background, maybe you want something like a telephoto lens, very strong, almost a parallel projection, and see if you can move it sideways. What I'm doing is I'm simply clicking the X and then dragging around here. Clicking the Y, clicking the Z, makes it go in and out, fly the camera in and out. Other things we can do, if this is, by the way, scaling it, right? If you need more of a wide look to that, you may want to also now look at some other things, and that's the coloring of the rocks. In fact, there is a preset way to do that. You can texturize it. And any of these things, by the way, the carved appearance, those erosion effects, many of these can be saved. You have the store masks here, the store lighting. For instance, we have two light sources, right? We have this light from above, very bright, and this one here, directional. And these lights can be stored in case you want to bake them in a game or some other environment, use them elsewhere. So you can store the lighting. Notice that they are stored simply here as a separate image. And I'm still not sure how to respond to that. Somebody's calling. Let's go see. Yeah, we will do the test later on. Okay. All right, so we need this. Let me finish this, okay? Give me about another 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll go interactive. So what we want to do here is to add a little bit of coloring also based on elevation. The thing we just did here is the sediments. That's nice, but it's not complete enough. And what I want to do is add a texture. So creating the texture, there's a couple of ways to do that. One of them is here, okay, the texture, and then adjust how low or high these different levels are. There are 3 levels of coloring, the green in the valleys, the rocks along the sides, medium elevation, and then the top from the snow. But you can bring it down all the way, still have a little bit of the green, perhaps adjust how transparent that snow mix appears, perhaps adjust this here for almost like, let's say you change it instead of grass green, give it some sort of a bluish tint. You have a bit of a lake, frozen lake appearance here. And so there's a lot of different ways to make this look like a really frozen landscape and bring it up to higher elevation, adjust all of these things too. A lot of different options and different ways to spend a lot of time, right? What I'll do here is give it something kind of an average set of values. And there is actually another way that I like to colorize this, but I'm not going to go into that too much today. This is something we cover a lot in the River Canyon tutorials, including how to make it look like sediment layers, colorized sediments that are stratified appearance. So in this case here, we'll go mostly winter, deep winter, and perhaps click the winter color, the snow color, to make it fully white. It has a little bit of a non-white blue, off-white blue tint by default. So here we go. We have a nice little river that's pretty much frozen in the foreground. Do we want to see it? That's a question too. Is this going to be perhaps not even visible? So sometimes you don't need to worry about it too much, because it might not end up being visible in your final render. By the way, one more thing we can also add there is the color of the background itself. You can change, you see the object color, which we're not using right now. This is what we did before when it was just the object color. So yeah, there you could set the color like so, and now the whole mountain range looks like sandstone. But you could also ignore that and simply go to the color that you have from the elevation map, right? The brighter it is, the higher it is. That's therefore you see where it's dark, it's down deep in the valley. Or the swap image containing now the coloring that we got from creating this texture. There is one more option here, and that's to actually put the sediments to their own color, forcing the sediment color, especially if you have the snow and the grass or something like that here. Really interesting to look at the, perhaps let me go back to grass here. Something like that. So we have the green. And if you want to show something more like spring and grass is growing again, it's a good idea to do that as you do this, right? So you can colorize the snowpack. This is what I like with the snow, is to make it look like, even though the snow may not have gotten down all the way and cover it permanently, you can have the snow appearing in many different levels, including levels where the snow has melted here. Like here you see the melt line, the snow line, but there are some snowpack amounts and accumulations in other areas as well. So that's a great additional way to give it even more of a wintry appearance, right? If you want to show late winter, actually. New winter, you'll get basically everything is white. Right. So let's go with that. And let's see, there's one more thing that I like to do, and that's to add a bit more lighting effect. So change the background color to bluish tint, something like that, but very little of that blue, almost white here, right? And actually even grayish. If you want to show a snowstorm coming in, it's mostly gray. And so what you want to do is to have that background color, that environment color, shine onto the scene. We call that global illumination or ambient lighting, actually. So we have that option here, ambient occlusion, to light it. And what I'll do is, there's actually two options there. When you click on that, you have the multiply mode. And what it will do is, it looks a bit grainy, but if you enable the anti-aliasing here up to 5 level, that's going to be fine. It will be clearing that out with the sub-pixel resolution rendering, and it'll be a nice quality render. What it does help you with is to make some areas that are too dark otherwise, make them a little bit better, easier to see. Let me uncheck that, and then you'll notice if I go really dark like this, right, there is not much you see here. Let me zoom in. Oh, I can't even zoom in. I have to move in here. There you go. Something like this. So these are some really dark areas. And if you want to make them easier to see, you have two options. One is to brighten up the entire scene, but that might saturate the white parts of the snow here. That's already getting a lot of sunshine. So another option is to use ambient occlusion lighting, because now the sky color you have, this one here, let me make it a little bit lighter even. This sky color is going to shine on the entire scene, especially if you put it in additive mode. That's going to bring it back into better visibility as well. So that's one thing. Let's do a test, actually. Let me do a final test. Reduce the pre-filter, because we want to see some more of the details. At about 50 or 60 is good. We don't want to see too much erosion, or maybe we do. That really depends on your story you're trying to depict in that image. And if I want to show a lot of snow, kind of make it roundish. And there you go. Let's go and render that. So I'm going to click OK. And because I have this anti-aliasing level up at 5, it takes a little while. But now you have an image with so much better appearance. So let's go back and undo that and redo the whole thing. But let's select our final view, final render. There will be something like Transform 3D Designer. There it is. Let's step out. There, this one. Step out. Let's change the camera perhaps a tad, little bit. I'm going to go without ambient occlusion. I'm going to go with just a little bit more white light. Perhaps sunlight like this. I love this. I love this. This is so beautiful. I want to go skiing in Switzerland again. Look at that. Okay, so now the picture here is not complete, but that's okay. I'm going to have something else in the foreground, some hill or something in the foreground covering up this opening here. I could actually lower this a little bit, make sure I do see the horizon. It's going to be single color, so it's easy to pick to make it transparent later on. That's a key thing if I want to composite that into something else later on. Let's zoom out a little bit. Let's zoom to the point where we see everything. Let's see if we can go sideways. There you go. So, and you know, this, you see the edge here kind of in a perspective projection. It's not going to go totally parallel to the edge of the image. Now, you could rotate this a little bit until it does, but then, of course, the other one on the left is skewed. That's okay. One of them is going to have to go. We can go sideways and clip it, or we can not worry about it too much. Maybe we'll have a tree in the foreground that's going to cover some of that anyway. So, you know, it's always good to have some borders around it. If you have, especially if you have this image as a very high definition image. So let's go do a final render on that. Before we do that, though, let's store the masks. Now, I don't have masks active anymore right now, so I need to go here, create texture again. And that's going to reset everything, unfortunately. But that's okay. This is for demonstration. When I'm working with those elevation or sediment colors and so on, I can store the masks. And those are the masks, 3 masks of anything contained by rock, anything contained by snow, and anything contained by grass. There's another thing I might want to store that I showed earlier, and that's the lighting. And then there is another thing here called the erosion map. That alone is really interesting as a resource too. Sometimes if you composite it somewhere else, or you want to add some additional erosion in some areas. The Z buffer, really interesting too, to see how deep or how far away the pixels are in that scene. And then there's also the depth map. That's really the height map. That's the elevation map, right? That's that shows how high the elevation is on each part of the mesh, of the surface. And then the texture is the coloring that we have, but that one we're not getting much because I don't know why, but we have this. Oh, it's all white. That's why. You have the snow all over. That's why. So if we had actually a different one here, if we store that texture, then we'll see some greens. And that's actually a really good trick to use if you want to see a colored representation of the snowpacks, the ones that are filled here where the sediments are, right? If you use that snowpack here, how do you identify the snow that's on the sediments here, the sediment coloring? That's one way to do it, right? And then you can go and decide, perhaps do you add some texture to that or give them a totally different color, perhaps, right? And then there's also the alpha and the save OBJ. You can save this into an OBJ file. That could take quite a while. And I'm going to simply cancel that and hope everything is fine. So I'm going to do a final render now. Let's give it a bit more detail. Oh, no, it's never final. Let's add one more thing. I'm going to add some puffy clouds here. Now, the puffy clouds, there's a couple of different presets. Perhaps in a different tutorial, we'll see how to create your own. These are typically a bit overdriven. They come from another feature called the particle modeler. And the particle modeler is essentially a cloud modeler based on particles. The ones I like a lot is this one here. sky puffies, but you got to be careful. Save your work before you get in here, because some graphic cards are a little bit chubby or a little bit sluggish, and they may have a bit difficulty in rendering this if you fly into it, if you get too close into it. So try not to fly into that unless you've done some tests and it's not going to hang your system. Right? This is very intense rendering, and it's actually not on the GPU. The clouds are on the CPU, whereas the mountains are rendered on this on the GPU. Things will change and evolve, so you know, be prepared for more. But this is a good way to add a little bit of puffy clouds to that. Perhaps let's see, something like this. Okay, let's go give it the final angle we want. There. All right, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. This one. And move it to the right. There you go. So that will be my final render. And of course, I'm not going to keep everything. In the end, I'm going to keep only a portion of it. Let's go render that. All right, so this render is one of the renders I'm going to use. Oh, so it's not all in the winter. We have some rocks, we have some grass, we have some snow above. Cool. Let's go and select the sky and then deselect or invert the selection so we can get to actually select just the mountain. So I'm going to use the magic wand tool here. And if this guy is unique, we can actually see here on the selection alpha overlay, everything else is no marching ants. There's a selection area here as well. So I'm going to use the shift key to select them both. Click with the shift key down. Now I have the sky selected and the area below it. And what I want to do is really inverse the selection. So select, invert. And so now I have this area selected. Right. So in fact, I might not even need the entire image. If I want to select only a portion of it or keep a portion of it, I could use this custom brush selection tool and pick it up as a custom brush. One way to do it is simply go to the brush and say use the selected as brush. Boom. And it's now in my brush. You can see the opacity is still very low. Let's adjust it. There you go. But, well, it's not all perfect. And there's some stuff at the bottom it did select too. What we can do is say ignore this and simply undo. We still have that selection. We could erase that part. Let me disable the preview. We could erase the selection we have at the bottom here. We can do that with the rectangle, and normally that will select it. What we want to do is undo, and that's Control Z, and then use the Shift key and deselect it with the right button. Bingo, that cleared it. So now we have really just the central part with the mountains. Now we can go and pick that up as a custom brush, or even better, use only a portion of that. So custom brush selector is a way to build a custom brush from a portion of the image. And I'm going to drag and select, and it will use the alpha channel if there is a selection in effect. So now in my selection, in my brush rather, I have this. This is my custom brush. And this is definitely one you will want to save. Now you can save it in two places. You can save it on file, or you can go and save it as an image. So now it's here as well, which means if you lose this image, if you clear the selection, if you mess this up and everything is gone, you can simply click here and bring it back. But it's not going to be centered by default. You can do that here though. You can center it. There you go. It also doesn't have the selection mask applied. You can do that here though. You can do that in a couple of places. You can replace the alpha, put that there. So, you know, really in the brush is where you want to work with it. So here's the brush. How we store that, there's another way to do that. So you can go to the brush menu here and save it. And I will simply go to a file. PNG file recommended. Targa is the default. TIFF is good too. BMP, all of them will save typically with the alpha channel. But another one is here, browse media. Now what I did is I created a new category, creating a folder here. So I have my mountains, all right? And so let me do that again here. My other mountains, right? And when I do that, I am now in my mountains here. Here's my other mountains. Oh, there it is. I must have had some sort of a dot in front of it. Let's just leave that alone. I'm going to go save it here under my mountains. I have 2 other mountains already saved as brushes, and I'm going to give it a name here. This is mountain 3. Get rid of this little character here, and okay that. So now it saved that image and all the brush settings into that particular image. So that brush. So I can go back to that mountain. I can click another one, and if I clear the alpha channel and the image here, you can see whatever the settings are for that brush with random position and other things. It can apply all that. This one here is using the rotation based on the angle. Now it's ignoring the angle, but it still applies the size. And so you can easily work with that to say, well, here's my mountain. You can preview, enable the PRV. There you go. So you can set the mountains right there. Click it once, there you go. Or if you would prefer the other mountain, there's mountain 3. Put this one. Now, you need it a little bit bigger, then let's go and work from this stored copy and resize it. There you go. So now it's a little bit closer. Of course, this has a little problem because the sun is shining from the other direction. You want to be careful about lighting. In fact, let's do that. Let's use this one, but flip it sideways. You can use the brush flip horizontal, shortcut X. So simply use that. That will, oops, undo. There. That will flip it the other way, and now you have the sun shining from the right side as well. So that's another way to use to create a bit more of a foreground mountain range, right? Oops, we still have the random angle on that. Let's go disable that. And perhaps random position, and I don't know what else it's stored. Yeah, it has random position. It has, let's disable the brush transforms altogether. There. And so there are a lot of different ways to put this together. No, one layer at it. It's not really layers, but it's one distant mountain to a closer mountain at a time. So that's one thing I wanted to do, is to show just a couple of ways to put these images together. And then, of course, one thing we might do is have already an image. Maybe you have some photographs of trees that you worked on, or you can open an image that contains the alpha channel also, but you want that as a brush so that it uses it, and you can then stamp it down here, put it in the foreground. So I'm going to go here to the brush menu and open this one here, for instance. This one has a nice set of multiple brushes that came actually from the from the foliage brushes in Howler, and enable that. And so now here you go. You can store that, perhaps go to brush, store, and manage that copy. So here it is. And so things you might want to do is make it a little bit smaller, change the hue, maybe a dry look for late autumn colors, maybe something like a little bit darker or lighter, more saturated, less saturated. Let's see, a little bit lighter if it's closer. There you go. And so stamp it down, and you get your scene to come together a little bit more. Other things you might want to do is, of course, change the colors of the sky. One easy way to do that, if you have a clear sky like this, let me turn the preview of the brush off here, is to simply put a gradient there. So what I could do in this one here, for instance, is select this brush with the magic wand, select this background with the magic wand, and oh, I do have a little bit of selection here. It's probably bleeding from the white area into it. How do we get rid of that? One way to do that is simply paint on the alpha. You can see here under the brushes, right-click on that. There is a paint on alpha. You can soft or hard paint on it. And as you paint on it, this will, with the left button, add to the selection, or with the right button, remove from the selection. And what you want to do is focus on that circle. Don't look at the square, but the circle is where the actual brush image is. And with that, you can go and adjust that transparency or that visibility. You can also change the size of that. And of course, you need to enable brush transform. This one's a pretty large image, it's a custom brush. And so now here you can see how I'm erasing the selection. So let's do that here as well. Zoom in. I'm using the left shift and control key to pan around with the left button or zoom in and out with the right button. And then I can paint on that with the right button to remove from the selection. There you go. So that will, one more. There's a little bit more here. And that will allow us to clean out the selection. It's a good idea also to store the selection. If you spend quite a bit of time in making a good selection mask, go and store that. You never know when you need to get back to it. This is a stored copy that you can easily replace. All right. So what do we do for the sky? We may have a photograph. In fact, that's another place too to go, right? If you look at opening an image like this one here, or this one here, there's always great images around that you can take or find online to use and composite there. Best if you find one in your backyard. Just take a picture at sunset or sunrise. And another way to do that, actually, if you want to just have that image ready, rather than just opening it here, since we're currently working on this one, you can import it into a stored image. That's a great way to work with that. So for instance, if this image is one you want to have handy, you can select it, and it will simply load it into a stored copy here, right? So later you could say, oh, now we can use that as a brush, right? And when it's a brush, you can decide where to paint it. Now maybe it's way too big here, so let's go store this, store and manage a copy of it, and make it way smaller. Right? Maybe not that small. There you go. But you know, it's only going to appear where the alpha channel lets you paint it. And of course, I have the scale here added in on top of that. So that's what I'm talking about. Oh, I'm still painting on alpha. That's not what I'm talking about. So let's go and let's see. Just select a regular brush. Simple brush, there you go. Then select this, I think that should do it. There you go. So you can see how you can paint on a selected mask or just a portion of it. I'm gonna go back to the one I wanted, like this one here. You could now do this in a couple of other ways. And one more would be simply a gradient sky. And so if I go, for instance, if I go to the fill settings, there are a couple of ways to fill things, and one of them is the gradients. So there's a choice of predefined gradients. Some of them here, this one, the blue going into white and then dark gray. That one I love as a gradient. Let's actually apply gradient sky to fill. Or if we use this tool here, we have the linear gradient tool. You can see how it's applying that gradient. And so the nice thing about that is that it already has some beautiful bluish parts. So you don't need to see the horizon. You can just have it like this. And that will add a nice little gradient to the sky. Let's clear the selection. And our picture is coming together quite nicely. All right, I think that's about it. We've gone through an hour. I'm going to add just one more thing. In about 5 minutes, I want to show you just the very basics of adding an animation to that. First of all, we need to make it look a bit more like, let's store this here. We need to make it look a little bit more like a winter scene, so everything will go white. So this is actually, I don't know if that's really going to be a good idea, but or not. No, just let's keep it like this and focus on animating and adding a snowstorm to that. All right, so first of all, animation. Right here, we can create an animation. And when we create an animation, you have a choice to either erase it to the secondary color or keep a copy of the current frame. That's what we do by default. We want how many frames? 200. Will take 500 megabytes almost. It shows here how much memory is required. And by the way, don't trust this too much. If you go really high, it's going to show, oh, it's still plenty going, but it's actually already wrapped around. It's a 32-bit app, and it doesn't know more than 2 gigabytes of memory. So you want to go in small increments here. When you see 222 takes 500 megabytes, you can probably go to 888. and it's reaching the 2 gigabytes or 2000 megabytes. So that's about the maximum I would go. Let's go not quite that many. Let's go 100. And the frame rate, you can always change that later on, though. That's the speed at which you will play it. So now every frame right now that you see here in the film strip is, of course, a copy of that previous image. And what we really want to do is add a snowstorm to that, add maybe some beautiful glowing sun on the right side, and then also add some snow coming in, snowstorm, and move the camera, zoom in a little bit. Now, we're not going to zoom into this as a 3D scene anymore. This is a flat 2D image, but we can at least do a little bit of a soft zoom or a little pan. So let's go and do that. Let's add a little bit of snowstorm. There's a timeline under the animation menu here. There's a timeline. You see that here below the animation scrub bar right there. Click on that. And with the timeline, I'm going to go move this here. I'm closing some of these. I don't need these anymore. So I'm going to simply add the snowfall here. Where is it? Filters. In the timeline editor, we have filters. All the way at the bottom, there's an animated collection. It's very similar, by the way, in the layout of these filters, very similar to what you see here. These filters are mostly for single images, except that many of them also now have an option to apply on the entire image set from the animation. Right? For instance, if you want to change to contrast, you can do so, and you can click animate instead of OK. If you click OK, it's just on one image. You can actually do a side-by-side here to see what's the effect before and after applying that. And then when you click OK, it applies it on the whole image. But the thing is, when you animate that way, it applies it over the entire frame sequence the same amount, no change over time. What you do here is a bit different in the sense that you can choose a filter, maybe the same ones, and add a change over time. There's keyframes you can set here. Right? So in this preview here, you can see, for instance, if I go to the first frame, you can say, let's come from black and hit the keyframe here, and then go to about this much and be at full intensity, right? And then towards the end, let's keep it still there, but then at the very end, we kind of fade back again, or maybe much to the contrary, we totally saturate to white, both the brightness and the value. And so what you can do is you can create an animation like this that goes through varying amounts of these keyframes. So now we actually have created this animation where we kind of come from darkness to full light and then very bright at the end. Now, sometimes you're not quite happy with the result. So what you do is you undo. If you had this checked, that is checked by default, it takes a little time in the memory to use that undo. There's only one level of undo across the whole animation. Be careful not to uncheck that if you're not quite sure what you're doing. You want to have the ability to hit undo and quickly get back to another try. So what I'm going to do here is scroll down to another filter all the way at the bottom, the animated series called Snowfall. And let's do it first just to see what that looks like by default without keyframing anything here. So now it renders the snowfall across the entire frame sequence. Click to play. And you see these snowflakes are coming down pretty harsh, pretty fast from the top, almost vertical. I don't like that. I click the undo here. I'm going to change these snowflakes. First of all, I'm going to have some snowflakes far away. That's a blizzard, small flakes going almost horizontal. So I'm going to need to select my my region here. I'm going to go perhaps with the lasso tool here and select everything in the sky all the way to very close in the mountain scene here, but not right at the front. I may want to make it not too sudden. I don't need to, I mean, I could add this mountain here, or rather right button and shift to remove it. And then this one here to carve out some more. With the shift button, you get to add or remove from the current selection. But the thing is, I want that to be a little bit softer. So again, I blur the alpha, and I say, let's do something like this. Here on the right side, it also blurred it. I don't need that, so I'm going to use the selection rectangle to alpha and remove that, or rather left button, add that again. And so that way, I have a selection mask which will allow me to show a lot of heavy snowflake appearing in the back far distance here over the mountains, but not so much nearby. All right. So what I'll do is apply that with a lot of snowfall. You see the preview now has a lot of snowfall up here. It doesn't have any down below. You can see that better if you increase the snowflake's size, but I'm going to make it pretty small and too small perhaps at first. No velocity going down. That's the vertical velocity. The wind speed can blow to the right or to the left. I'm going to have it blow to the left, and I'm not going to go full speed because the snowflakes that are closer to me, later on I'm going to add snowflakes that are closer to me, those are going to need to move faster. They're going to appear bigger, but they also need to appear to move faster to give that impression that they are closer to me. So what I'll do is I'll have some horizontal movement to the left, just not a whole lot. And no turbulence, small size. The brightness, you could keep it all bright or perhaps a little bit dimmer so that it appears to be fading into the distant haze. So apply that and see what that gives us. All right, so here's the first batch of snowflakes. Doesn't look like a whole lot. Let's go do another one. Just click apply again. You can do this 3, 4, 5 times. Change the speed perhaps a little bit. Increase the speed to the left. Make sure perhaps they're not too small. Add a little bit more size. And you see now more and more of these snowflakes there, right? And then click play, and you see a lot of that snow. Now it's time to show us a few snowflakes that are closer to us. And so at this time we need to increase how close we can see them. We can perhaps go back to that selection mask with the lasso and add or remove from the selection with the right button. Nope, that was the wrong one, left button then. I always get them confused here, mixed up. And again, blur that selection. And that's this one here, for instance, or the alpha or the Gaussian blur. And again, this time we'll have bigger flakes, and they move a little bit faster yet. And we have more turbulence visible now. And we have only few of these. You don't want to have too many of those. They're going to be brighter though, so they appear a bit closer as well. All of these things will make it look like they're closer. Right, check this out. If I move this now, if you focus on some of the bigger ones, they're a bit brighter, they're bigger, they move faster. The whole movement appears to be that of snowflakes that are closer. And then so in the end, you'll want to do that at brightest level and perhaps really massive big size and high turbulence, high speed, a little bit of vertical draft down too, and just a few of those. You can always click that apply button a few times. And don't worry about having too many of them. Check it. And I would recommend actually a little bit of a different appearance, like movement downwards as well. That will easily give it more of the impression that they're really close by, because you know, when maybe you're standing under the awning or under a tree, and you're having some snowflakes go in a slightly different direction because of the way that the turbulence is pulling them in. All right. I think that's it for today's exercise. There's much more we could have done, and I want to do. We'll do some others. Let's go and see if we can do our questions and answers. So I need to go back to, where do we have that? There we go. Let's see if we have... And again, I'm not too sure about how to use all this interface, so pardon me if I'm a total mess here. All right, let's try and see if we have an interactive session. Not sure. I thought I had that. Yeah, you know what? I'll need to read this, read up on that for another time. Let's see. Ayo, can you still hear me? Anybody else? Can you guys still hear me? Not sure how we go about this. There's too many things happening. I'm not able to see the other. Ah, there is my screen. All right. That looks like a chat box. Let me stop the sharing for now and see what else we can do here. Screen share, showcase, Q&A. How do I enable that? Not quite there. I must have that somewhere. So maybe I do need to go to that link, huh? All right, so good. You can hear me. How do we get into a Q&A? I don't know if there are any questions. Probably everybody is giggling and laughing at my poor performance here. This has been a bit of a learning experience, more for me than for you on Dog Waffle, but for me on Chrome. Let me see. Okay, you know what? There's still time. Let's see if we can catch up on that. The host, you can collect questions from viewers before or during the Hangout. Q&A only. Turn the Q&A app on or off. Go to Hangout on air event page. Click on Q&A. All right. Let's see. Where is that? Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's just not telling me. Q&A. Okay, so it tells me it's disabled. Why the hell would it not tell me how to enable it right there, right now when I need it? Google, dudes, you guys need to improve this. This is not usable. Control room. Whatever that is. Yeah, this is just not going to be easy to navigate and find. Oh, I do see a question. Really interesting program here, quite versatile. And are all the weather patterns on preset? Can I do rain and thunderstorm? Good question. And no, unfortunately not. We do have animated snowstorm or snowfall. As far as like more elaborate or stormy conditions, I do have a twin brother that's a storm chaser. I'm not sure if he's available to take pictures as needed, but he does have certainly some great tornadoes and other pictures. No, we don't have so much weather patterns collected. That would be what you can do, right? That's if you have some stormy pictures, if you have some beautiful sunsets, if you have different scenarios out there. This one here I saw this morning. I'm not sharing. I guess I'm not sharing my screen right now. But anyway, yeah. If you look at all these, saw these storm pictures of clouds, they were photographs. I did not paint those in in Howler. But there is a particle-based cloud system. Let me just show you where that is, and you can take it from there if you have the program or the trial. There is a free trial available. Let me go, and where do I share my screen again? Share my screen. See, this is just, I need to have multiple screens here so I can easily control everything. There you go. So I'm going to go screen share again, full screen, plein écran. And hopefully you can see this. I'm going to go back into the program and close my animation. Selection, clear alpha. And by the way, before we're done, I want to show also how to save an animation. Once you've done this, whatever the animation is, whether you have a bouncing ball frame by frame or photograph or video that you imported and so on, you'll want to go to the animation menu, store that if that's an animation you may want to use again later and do something with. So you can store just like you stored images or stored brushes or stored the selection mask in the alpha channel. You can store the animation and preview it here. And let's say you destroy this animation, or you mess it up, or you lose it. Let's say free, right? And you do something else. Let's say you create something of a different dimension, something like this. At some point you say, oh, I want to restore this animation. Simply click it, and that will restore this entire image, this entire animation right there. Now, you can also do something else with that, and that's to use it as a swap image. That's basically the backside of your canvas. There's two images. There's a main image and a swap image. You can see that right there. Main image, swap image. You see that at the top, it says swap, and here's main image. So, for instance, when we were in the 3D Designer, we had the elevation map in the main image at first. The coloring was in the swap image. But so you can actually use an animation that's stored like this as an animated swap image. Maybe we can cover that in another webinar. There are also a couple of tutorials on the PD Howler channel as well. Anyway, so you can store animations, you can store images, you can store brushes, brush images, and selections. And it's always good to become familiar with those techniques to temporarily store something as a resource to later on use again. So one thing I wanted to show you is how to create clouds. Where you do that is under the File, Filter, in the Animated collection. There is a particle modeler here. Now I'm going to clear this animation, free this animation, or rather create a new one, just 20 or 30 frame long, and erase it to secondary color in this case. So I have just a very short animation of 30 frames. And here I go, Start Animated Particle Modeler. Right? The particle modeler, it's another beast of its own. And what it does is allow you to create clouds. I'm not going to go into too much detail with it. The idea here is that you can paint them, you can create, give them different shapes, do all sorts of stuff with that, get ready to render it, and have a little bit of a 3D appearance to that, with different levels of shading and lighting to that. And then on top of that, go into animating it. You can also export them, and when you export them, right here, you can save them, and they become part of clouds that you can also see in a 3D Designer. Right? So the thing would be to actually save them in the folder where Dog Waffle is installed. Then that way it can see it as another cloud system, also available under your 3D Designer. But I'm not going to go too much into this particular tool here. This is definitely something worth exploring, though. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with these clouds. They can have the particles on the clouds can have strings attached or elastic bands, and so as you move them, they tore themselves apart. You can create like twirling effects or tornado vortices. Some really fascinating stuff. Takes a little bit to learn, but definitely some fun stuff with that. So let's see, there is, let's see if there's any other questions. Yeah, too many chat sessions. I'm not sure. Don't worry about it. I'm not sure myself what I'm doing here. I know I'm a bit more familiar with WebEx and one or two others, Team Viewer. But I think this is probably usable. I wish I could hear you guys too, though. I don't know if we can open the microphone somehow. Let's see. I don't know if the microphone can be enabled for everybody to talk in the group chat. We'll try that another time. All right. I think there's probably too many unknowns right now for me to navigate this safely. Let's see. All right. Is there any other question? No. Let's see. All right. Well, you know what? The hour is up. Let's call it done. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for watching, for joining. And, this was a funny one. I think I'm still going to leave it and post it and have it on the YouTube channel as a memory of how things can go as we explore in real time. All right. Thanks, everybody. You have a good rest of the night, the day, the morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.